Okay, hello. Sorry for that. Thank you. My name is Brian. I will be your host. This session, full title is The AI Train is Leaving the Station, and I Feel Like I Missed It. Which is like kind of how I felt for real. And I sort of maybe still do. My name is Brian. I live in Paris, as I've mentioned, I guess, already in the earlier session. And I've been working in IT for 30 years now, and I've had really an insanely rewarding career. And I'm here standing before you today to tell you that I have no idea what I'm doing. So there's a similarity then in like that young kid that you met like 25 years ago or whatever, and I had no clue. I feel like I still have no clue on what I'm doing, like really. And if I look back on my career, like 30 years can be a lot. Like this, I did the brianmadden.com website. I wrote a bunch of books. I created this Forum conference. I worked at VMware for 4 years. I left VMware and did some passion projects. Like I worked for this pinball company. We built a platform for building pinball machines, like real pinball machines. This for other manufacturers. This is one of the machines built on our platform. I did all the documentation for them and like how-to tutorials and like wiring guides. It's all the same stuff, just for pinball wiring architecture, not AI stuff. I moved to Paris, a year ago. All this stuff in my career. It's great stories, but like it's in the past, like it's very easy for us to look back and what we've done and reminisce and everything, but that's all in the past. Like, what am I doing today? Like, what's my story and what am I trying to figure out? I've always been an EUC guy, an EUC professional now, my whole 30 years. And for me, EUC, end user computing, for most of us was Citrix. Like, this is my comfort zone for 25 years. And they got weird. I'm like, not ready. And now, like, they're not even public. It's like owned by a private equity company. Sean Bass is working there, who's my boss at VMware as CTO. Like, everything's weird now. And VMware, okay, like, this is my comfort zone for 20 years. But now it's VMware by Broadcom, and, like, they're also owned by private equity, and like they don't even do Horizon anymore. That's its own company. I got stickers. And then, okay, so that's, wow. Well, Microsoft. Okay, this looks like my safe place, I guess, my happy place, my comfort zone. Like, what's Microsoft up to nowadays? VMware is owned by private equity. My screen is, there we go. VMware is owned by private equity. Citrix is owned by private equity. Microsoft is a $3 billion market cap? No. $3 trillion market cap? Like, is that even a thing? I'm not touching it. I'll stand away. I thought Microsoft was like the big, evil, mean, they're doing it wrong, they're all that stuff. Like, how is this so massive? And what are they even up to? I wrote a book about DAS like 10 years, more than 10 years ago. 10 years ago, let's call it. And we made all these like crazy statements in there. Like, there's the fact that Microsoft could enter the DAS market themselves. That'd be crazy, right? And I'm like, what is happening? Like, my whole world of 30 years is just being like really turned upside down. Like, VMware is now owned by PE, private equity, and customers are nervous. Citrix is owned by private equity and customers are nervous. Microsoft is crushing it. Like, everyone loves them, and they're one of the most valuable companies on planet Earth. And I'm like, how long have I been asleep in pinball land? I mean, I left what I thought was a perfectly sane, normal world where I knew how everything worked, and now I'm like, I don't know what is going on. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the world is doing. Like, holy F. I have no idea. And I'm reminded of this book called The Fourth Turning is Here. And Neil Howe is the guy who in the 1960s came up with the concept of like the generations, like, you know, like baby boomer, Gen Z, like that millennials, that concept, and that each generation has different characteristics. That guy is an anthropologist who invented that. So this is his book. What the fourth turning basically says is that our generations go in 4 cycles, much like this display. I wonder if I can like blow on something. So there's 4 cycles. It's much like a spring, a summer, a winter, a fall, and a winter. And the characteristics of every person's generation, like boomers are the way that they're born because of this 4 cycle, like this larger macro cycle. Millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, because of where they're born in the macro cycle impacts like, were you born in spring? Were you born in summer? Were you born in like the philosophically, right? Like, are things hard? Are things easy? Are things plentiful? Are we collecting? Are we giving? Are we resting? And that affects how things work out. This book is really interesting. It gets a bit long. If you want to dig deeper, this guy's done like a lot of podcast guests, so just look for him on podcast apps and you can listen to an hour conversation. But it gave me the idea of like this concept of macro cycles. Like there's a spring, a summer, a fall, a winter, a spring, a summer, a fall, a winter. And the reason I mention this is like I started to think back to my own career, because here I'm like, I've been working 30 years, but like Citrix and VMware are crazy now, Microsoft is crazy, the world is doing, I don't know what's happening in tech. And I can look back at like my career. I worked at, you know, in VMware world a long time. I worked in Citrix world a long time. I can look at these and think, like let's use VMware as an example. The springtime for VMware as a company was their early days, right? Workstation, GSX, ESX, like where it's new, we're like starting new things, we're experimenting. As VMware moved into summertime, then that's when like we saw vSphere, vSAN, Horizon, Workspace ONE, like the growth, the productivity, like things that are shining, are happening, they're really working. Then we saw like the fall time for VMware is VeloCloud, Carbon Black, Pivotal, Nyansa, all these other ancillary like kind of like nuts they were collecting. And then you get to the winter, and the winter is, well, they're owned by private equity. They're reevaluating everything, fire some customers, fire some employees, and make room for what's new. I can say the same thing about like Citrix, for example, right? So Citrix in their spring was like WinFrame, MetaFrame, Enfuse. Citrix's summer is XenApp, Zen Desktop, Citrix Access Gateway. Citrix autumn is ZenSource, Cloud.com, Share, Podio, ZenPrize, Reich. You forgot about some of these, didn't you? And their winter is actually like the same, owned by private equity. Reevaluate everything, fire some customers, fire some employees, make room for what's next. So you can look at this cycle. You can look at companies going through the cycle with their kind of macro arcs and their stories. You can look at that personally also too. Like I'm Brian. In my career, my early days, I was working for resellers in Ohio in the US where I grew up. I was like very small and just getting started and like exploring. Everything was fresh and new and limitless potential. During my summer years, this is like brianmadden.com, Bri Forum, writing the books, doing the training classes, starting to speak at events and like really leveraging kind of what I had gotten to that point. My fall time where you kind of like collect your harvest was at VMware in the CTO office. And then my winter, like my take a step back, let like growth, rebuild, that was me doing the fast pinball stuff. And then of course it goes around again too. So then it turns spring again. I live in France now. And the cycle continues. And it goes over and over and over again. And so you can look at companies, you look at people, and like I have a macro cycle with my career of the past 30 years or so, but you can look at, even within the macro cycle, there's lots of little mini individual cycles. And if we look at this, it doesn't matter if it's a technology, a product, a company, a person, the cycles are sort of similar, right? So the springtime, like things are new. It's learning and exploration, it's experimentation, it's new tools, it's new technologies, new concepts. It's building a solid foundation, understanding the core principles about like how something works, and it's making all the mistakes, like lessons learned. We make a lot of little mistakes. It's like when we plant things. We plant lots and lots of plants, Some of them we break, some of them don't, some of them die, some of them have potential. We're just kind of figuring out what's what. As we get into summer is the time when we start to implement some of this knowledge that we got in spring. We're growing, we're expanding, we're starting to collaborate and like share knowledge with our peers. And we're starting to really gain confidence and visibility in what we're doing. Like by the time we get to summer, we feel like, okay, I get how this works. I know the cycles. I can actually give some advice to some people like just doing their first plantings in spring. As we get into the autumn, this is where we start to reap the benefits of all the work that we did in the summer and the learnings we did in the spring. We start, our career leading major projects, leading major initiatives. We start mentoring other people. We start sharing and giving back what we learned. We start to like optimize and refine our processes and our methods for how we do things. And we really get recognition and establishment as an expert in our area. That, by the way, recognition might be within your company, within your team, within your local user group, within your technology area. Globally, there's lots of different ways to get recognition, but we really start to know what we're doing and can give back and be a go-to for people to help them. And then our winter this is reflection. This is where we kind of pause. We look at what we've achieved, what is phasing out, what am I going to cut, what am I going to get rid of. We plan for the future, but it's preparing for change. We know the spring is going to happen again, so we start to clear out the dead wood. We let go of these outdated technologies, we let go of these outdated practices, and we make space for our own future growth and our innovation. And so this is this macro cycle of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And we can look at a technology like with Citrix. I followed Citrix. Like I had a spring period in my Citrix, right? I had a summer period in my Citrix. I had a fall period in my Citrix. And I had a winter period with Citrix. I had the same thing with VMware. I had the same thing really with all of the technologies that I might have worked on with like cloud, with Kubernetes. All of these technologies have their own cycle, and I might be working on a bunch of different things. There are different phases in my life. I'm in spring with one company, I'm in fall over here, I'm in winter with this one. And we kind of keep track of these things as they each go through their own cycle. And if you look at your whole career, I can look at the hardcore technologies that I was really into in my career. Like I began 30 years ago working on the help desk. And then I was like a PC tech, and then I was doing Novell NetWare, and then desktop engineering, SMS, SCCM, Citrix, ASPs, Blades, VMware, VDI, HCI, MDM, MAM, EMM, consumerization of IT, digital workspace, like future work. All these things I was really, really into. And they each had their own full macro cycle of the seasons of when I was into them. Some of these were shorter than other ones. Some of these, like Blades. Like, Blades was a thing that you studied as a profession. Like, now they're just like the way that servers plug in, right? But there was like the Blade, the hyper, what was it called? There was like conferences just for Blades, basically. Utility Computing for Foundation, UCF. It was wild. So like these were all things that we studied and were into, and my specific journey was sort of this. And of course for me now, I look at all the things I did and try to figure out what's next. From the talk I gave earlier today, if you saw that one, like for me it was AI. That doesn't mean it has to be for all of us. That was just an interesting next step for me and something I kind of wanted to dig into. So the thing about AI is, as you know, it is extremely popular right now. And it's very trendy and everything. And so like, I don't want to be someone who jumps on the bandwagon. Because I personally have been studying AI for a while, since actually no, not since the 19th, since 2023, let's say. So if you look at my life from 1977 until 2024, for me personally, AI entered my life about here on my timeline. Now, that's not saying I didn't know anything about AI. Like if I look at my whole life and kind of like figure out my knowledge of AI by year, okay, sure. For 45 out of my 46 years, I'm not saying I didn't know AI. I definitely, for sure, absolutely knew what AI was for 45 of those years. Like all of you. I watched 2001: A Space Odyssey. I watched Terminator. I watched Her. I was caught up. And you sort of like think I'm joking. I mean, computers that refuse to take instructions from humans, killer robots, sex bots. You're caught up. That gave me the foundational knowledge about AI that I needed to know. And then this little sliver in here, I was like, oh my God, I blew the screen out with my excitement that this is so cool. It's going to change everything. Wow, amazing, amazing, amazing. But for me, this is just like recent in my career and all the things I've kind of done over the years. So if I look at AI, where I am with AI personally, as well as where the industry is with AI, it is currently springtime for AI. And that's the title of my talk right here. Because it's so new, springtime is a time when everything's new and we're just trying to understand what's what. Even though it's springtime for AI, I kind of feel like I'm already behind. Like if you haven't really dug into AI really, I mean, we've been talking about it for 2 years, there's all these things happening, there's tracks at the conference about it. Is it too late for us? I'm nervous that it's too late for me. But I think, okay, no, I know how to do things. I look at all those technologies I learned in my life. I can just learn this one the same way. Like I've done this before. I've been exposed to new technologies. I've identified that they're interesting to me, and I go for it. So let's just go to the same playbook I've done all these 30 years before, like to the interwebs. So I go to the Google, and I look on like artificial intelligence, and I find there's is it a trillion? 1.4 trillion results on artificial intelligence. That's obviously nonsense. There we go. This is too broad of a search. Artificial intelligence learning, I'll search for instead. And there are somehow more. Like, which I'm assuming that's how much more AI stuff has been written in between when I did this search versus I did that search. And I'm like, but Google, I don't know, it's all like link farms. Like, I need a book. I'll just go to Amazon and look for artificial intelligence, and there are 50,000 results. So, this is a tall order to try to like learn about AI. Where do I even begin? Well, okay, again, what do I actually know today? Like, I know how to learn. I've done this before. Look at all these things I learned in the past. So like, let me just figure out how I learn things. I set a goal. I sort of like walk backwards from that goal, and then off we go. So like my goal is to be like an AI expert, I guess. Okay, let's look into that. Here's some quotes. Well, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. AI doesn't have experts, only students. Trying to make it expert is like trying to make a map. The universe expands faster than you can travel. An AI to pause is to fall behind. Staying updated AI is like chasing the horizon. It's endlessly evolving. These are all real quotes, by the way. None of these are okay, one of these quotes is from me. But it's like, it's like kind of a panic attack. Like I want to learn AI. AI is the future. And then here we are like, don't worry, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to get there. And I'm like, And I talked about in the talk how like, I feel like the train is leaving the station. And I'm not there. Like, it's funny because I live in France now, right? So I'm learning French. Does anyone speak French? I'm currently learning about artificial intelligence. Je suis en train d'apprendre le français, l'intelligence artificielle. Like literally, I am on train. That's what in the process of is in France. And I'm like, I'm not on the train. The train has left without me. Every time I turn around, I'm like constantly reminded this train has left and I am not on it. So it was kind of a panic attack moment for me. I mean, like I said, in my career, I've done amazing things. I've done books. I've done this. I think it's a very rewarding and great career. And I don't even know what to do and where to begin. And I'm already behind. And it's very discouraging to me. So again, let me back up. Like, what do we know? Well, I know we can't become an AI expert. Like, that's not a thing. The field is too broad. It's evolving too fast. But I also know it's spring. In springtime, the stakes are low, but now is the time to play. So if we go back to that, like the characteristics of spring, we're building a foundation, we're learning, we're experimenting, we're trying different things. And it's interesting because this gives us permission to like not panic as much, because what we focus on doesn't really matter at this point, because it's just spring. Plant everything, see what grows, see what works, see what's like kind of interesting to you. And it's interesting also because AI is changing so fast. That means it almost doesn't matter what you become an expert on. Like, remember prompt engineering? It was like in all the articles, like prompt engineers make $300,000 a year and it's going to be the next career. So prompt engineering went from the hottest new tech job to obsolete. AI actually made prompt engineering obsolete in 6 months. Like, because now when you write the AI, there's another AI running behind it that knows what a good prompt is. It takes your dumb question, makes it into a good question, and then sends it to the AI secretly behind the scenes. You don't have to be a prompt engineer anymore. So all that studying you did to become a prompt engineer doesn't matter, which is almost liberating in some ways, because it is so new and everyone's just trying to figure everything out. Real companies are doing this also. Bloomberg is very famous story, spent $10 million training a GPT-3 model on their own data. And then GPT-4 came out and just destroyed it across the board in every single way, like right out of the box. So they spent months and $10 million to make this really great model. Then literally like the v.next just did better than what they did. And whoops, or not whoops, it's learning. I don't know. No one knows what they're doing is the point. But learning about prompt engineering, learning this, they're trying, they're experimenting, the stakes are low, they're trying. So when I look at this, figuring out how to even approach understanding and think about AI, I like to start with a goal. Like, what is your goal? And your goal might be figuring out how AI is going to impact your company. Your goal might be figuring out how you can use AI technology today. Your goal might be upskill yourself for future employability. That was very honestly mine. When I left VMware in 22, I worked for this pinball company for 2 years. So fun, does not pay like IT salaries. I was not in a position where I could like work on that forever, but I was like kind of getting burned out and it was like very fun to do. But then also like I was like 45 and I took 2 years off and I was like 45 and then I was 46 and like, can I get a job? What job is it going to be? What skills is it? Like it was, I was nervous suddenly. Windows is dead, as we learned earlier, right? Like what am I going to do next? But so for me, AI was like interesting sort of, but I'm like, this is going to impact business. And I think I've been spending my whole career, I'm thinking about how technology impacts business. There's something in there. And I dug into AI truly as like, I got to somehow figure out a way to stay relevant. Maybe your goal is to make as much money as you can ASAP to make it through your next personal winter. Valid. I mean, very, very valid. There's lots of reasons to do this. So for me, it was about figuring out what my personal goal was with what I want to do next. I was using AI as a thing. And I was very unashamed as like, I don't want to be suddenly like kind of too late in my career to start something new, but then I don't know what I'm doing. So, that's what it was for me. But going back to what do we know? So for me, I chose AI as the area to focus on. I know for sure that I'm not going to be an AI expert, as I said already. Like I think I would call myself a Citrix expert, a VDI expert, a virtualization expert, because you could be an expert in those fields. They were kind of small enough. You can't be an AI expert. So I'm not an expert in AI, but I am an expert in knowing how organizations adopt new technology, because that's really what I've been doing in some form for my whole career. And all of us are, by the way. We are experts in helping companies navigate big, scary changes. Like we all did that during COVID for like, how do we all work at home and we're secure and we have to change meetings, and like that was crazy, but we figured it out. We also realized that we don't have to know how something works in order to know that it's valuable, right? So like I know that cars are great. I don't really know how cars work, but it doesn't matter. I know how to use a car. I can like think about strategically, should I own it? Should I rent? Should I buy it? Like, we can understand things. I think a lot of us who grew up as technologists like really knew every single nook and cranny, every registry key, all the detailed innards of how things work. And that's not really how I am with AI, but it's okay. Like I don't have to know everything about everything, how it works. I can just start to understand like how I can use it and where it can be valuable. We don't have to know how something works to know it's valuable. As I said, we don't have to know how something works to know how to leverage it. And so it's like an attitude change for me in how I'm approaching AI and how I'm approaching like learning new things at my second turning. I mean, I went through spring, summer, fall, and then into my winter. And then in my winter was when I was like, this is part of my own journey of like, what am I throwing away and what am I refiguring out? And those things I'm figuring out are like, how do I learn? What's the purpose of learning? What am I trying to do? So when I think about AI and I think about the things I want to learn, I think this is Jeff Bezos' quote, like the easiest way to predict the future is to think about what we know now that's going to be still true in the future. So we can think things about like human nature, business organization, that kind of stuff. And that's what I did with AI. Like there's a lot of hype about AI, but there's a lot of things that I know that are true today that I know are going to be true tomorrow as well. Like vendor shenanigans. So vendor shenanigans are maximized with AI, just like they are with all technology areas. The vendor slides, Maximus awesomeness. A vendor talks about something and you're like, it's amazing. I'm very excited about that. And then you actually think about it for a second and you're like, no, actually that's garbage. So I have some pictures of like, these are not from here. These vendors who are here today are amazing. And we love you. And these are other vendors for other conferences. But these are real photos that I took myself. Here's like some vendor slides in their like vendor presentation on like why you need to know about Gen AI. Expectations of Gen AI impact are high. Impact areas, productivity gains, streamline processes, achieve cost savings, use Gen AI to implement business processes which were previously impossible and unthinkable. 76% of decision makers think Gen AI will be a significant impact. Okay. What do I do with that? The next slide didn't have the magic answer we were looking for, by the way. This slide, the next slide was you can buy our hyperconverged appliance, download some models, and have a play, which is great. The vendor now is selling the appliances before you even have a use for it. It's like pay us first for it, and then figure out what to do with it after you buy it. This other slide is, that's my desktop background, that's not the slide. Let's see. I'm gonna try and flip this connector over. That'll probably fix it. Okay. There we go. Get there. This slide is so good. Gen AI conventions. Think big, start small. There is no one size fits all. Don't trust, verify. Real world data is power. It will create value, not everywhere. I mean, this is great. Applies to literally everything in history. Nothing AI specific about that slide at all. Both these slides, I told you earlier I'm blogging about all this kind of stuff, and I wrote a blog post. This is from the World AI Con Festival. But the point is, what do I know about AI? Well, I know about vendors. I know vendors in AI are like marketing malarkey. And I know that I've had a lot of role in my life kind of separating like what's real and what's not real. We can do it with AI also. So there's these things where, like the AI technology is all different and crazy. I'm like, okay, I can start to understand like some value that I can provide. And that's what each of us can do to start to figure out like where we've been successful in the past and apply it to what is happening in the future, even if it's AI technology that's complicated that we don't really understand. So vendor shenanigans are maximized. But like I said, we're used to this, so it's actually not that new overall. It's funny, by the way, the vendor shenanigans to maximize. Like now, there's all these news articles about like dialing back the expectations. So there's you're reading more and more and more about this too, which is also nice because I don't feel as bad about being behind. If like the vendors went hard with what they can do with AI, and then we get there and it's like not quite there. The way I like to look at this with all of these expectations is gotta go to the hype cycle. Let's get there. Oh, this is good graphics. It's funny, it like resets my transition. There we go. So this is the hype cycle for AI. This is the latest one from this past summer. And just look at the distribution, like of what's going up versus in the trough versus like what's mature. So first of all, Gen AI, generative AI, which is like all the LLMs and GPTs and everything, that's right here, like heading down, down towards the trough. But the thing to me, if we look at AI in general, as I said, if you look at what we know, what's most interesting about AI is like what we don't know. This is a quote, it's the first time in history that no one has any idea what the world will look like in 20 years. This is Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote like *Sapien* and those books. So we know that no one really has any idea where things are going, which means we are not behind in that sense because we also don't know, but no one knows. So that actually works out very well for us. Sorry, I wanted to, there we go. I mentioned earlier today, we're talking about AI, and when I talk about AI, there's like different types of AI also. So for example, this is the same slide I showed earlier. There's AI research, which is like the real hardcore AI scientists. That's not any of us in this room. We're not gonna like be inventing new models or like building things. Like we're not, probably not. Maybe we're not moving the science of AI forward based on our position. But there's consumer AI, which is focusing on like how people use it. There's operational AI, which is how our companies use it. And there's the workplace AI, which is how our employees are using it to do their jobs. So that's not talking about the AI agents that I was mentioning earlier. This is the employees who are bringing ChatGPT on their phone into the office, who are like subscribing to services on their own and kind of doing their own sort of things. This workplace AI and this consumerization of AI, these areas very much are in our wheelhouse. So even though we're not going to like invent the next AI model and like work at OpenAI tomorrow, we can still think about how AI applies to us and our world. As I said, this really is like the consumerization of IT. Remember how quaint it was when our biggest problem was like our users were bringing in like iPhones and we wanted to use Blackberries? And like, it was so sweet. That's what we cared about. Because now these same consumers, they have AI, like the most powerful technology that they can do anything with. And so this workplace AI, the area we've been in for so long, is sort of the ultimate consumerization of IT. Because now our sort of workers can sort of do any of this. What's interesting about this though is because this means that our employees are finding these technologies and bringing them in. Every company is an early adopter when it comes to AI. So even if your company doesn't do anything officially, you have employees who are starting to use this. And now it gets interesting. I was on the podcast earlier this year. We talked about, first of all, the podcast is called AI Explored. Impact of AI Explored, thank you. And we talked about this fact that if our employees bring in AI and use it to like do their job quicker, what do we do with the extra time? Do they think deeper on other things? Do they like twiddle their thumbs and do nothing? Do they raise their hand and ask for more work? Like, what do we want them to do? Because you can ask 4 managers that will give you 4 different answers. So it's not just that the employees are doing this, it's we don't even have a way to think about like what is ideal. Like what is our and that's not even a decision for us in IT. That should be like HR and executive leadership, maybe legal, to think about like how these things are being used. But this is going on live right now in every company on planet Earth. Most of us just don't even know it yet that that's actually happening. And as I said, I keep on looking at generative AI, but going back to this, the hype cycle, so generative AI itself is only one little small dot. Think about how the hype cycle works. Like there's autumn is kind of from here. Like autumn is towards the end of the harvest and we know things. There's only one technology, computer vision, in autumn. It's funny to me because like how many trillions of dollars has humanity spent on AI? And all we have is like computer vision that made it like out of the summer. But if you look at where summer is, you can look at the hype cycle and say, this chunk is like the technologies in summer, this is in fall, and then all of these back here are the ones that are in spring. So I got one technology that's like in fall, I got 4 that are in summer, but there's like a lot where it's still springtime. So the good news for all these springtime ones is this is blue ocean, green fields. This is like no one really knows. We're still on the way up. Our souls have not been crushed yet. The technologies are not mature. We don't know who wins. We don't know who loses. We don't know if these technologies make it or not. There's so much going on right now that really people have no idea how it's going to end up. You can pick almost anything over here in this green section and like kind of not be behind, because again, we haven't even made it like off the hype cycle and into the real part where it starts actually impacting things in a major way. So there's a lot of space in front of us with AI, even if we feel like we don't know what we're doing, to be able to start digging in and trying to understand it. I mentioned before there's a website, the strategy guide .ai website, which is like where I'm putting my notes. And the reason I mention this website right now is because I want to mostly mention resources. I used to post in the slide presentations like links to other people I like, but they change. I mean, really good. Like some get added, some get deleted. So if you go to strategy guide AI/resources, you can see like I got lists of the people who I follow, whose newsletters I read, like the podcasts I listen to. There's good stuff in there. So strategy guide AI/resources, and then that's me on Blue Sky and LinkedIn. So that's kind of it, I guess, in like the springtime for AI. I really want the takeaways to be, number one, no one knows what they're doing. And it's like I was mentioning earlier, like with all those AI agents, go to Google. I don't use Google anymore. I only use ChatGPT, and it searches for me. But go to ChatGPT and just do a search. How do I start with computer use, that Claude computer use? You can play with that. You can start letting it control your computer. Just start playing around. I mean, it really is the way to do it. And you're not behind, because no one knows what they're doing yet, and everyone is just trying to figure everything out. So there's a bunch of podcasts you can listen to, a bunch of things you can read. But really just get out there and start playing. And I think this AI thing is crazy, and I don't know where it's going to go, but like I said, neither did anyone. So it's pretty good. We know for sure that our companies are going to be confused about it, and our workers and users are going to be confused about it. So we might as well learn as much as we can. With that, that's it. So spring. Thanks.